everyone. Welcome to another episode of Pulse Point by Synpulse. My name is Jenya Tkachenko. I'm the host and also a manager at Synpulse. And today with us, we have Lori Weir from FourEyes. Lori, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here with you.
Yeah, and thank you for making the journey. I know you came all the way from St. John.
That's correct. Yeah.
I would love to hear a little bit more about your company and maybe your origin story and how even you ended up in St. John.
Absolutely. So I am the co-founder and CEO of FourEyesFinancial, and we serve the wealth management industry across Canada. We've just started going into the US, and we do that from our head office in New Brunswick. We have an office in St. John, which is on the Bay of Fundy, and in Moncton, New Brunswick.
That's pretty cool. I think you're the first person we've interviewed here from St. John.
Well, it's not the financial epicenter of Canada nor the world. However, we are really, in the technology business. And what we do have are many, many talented software developers, data engineers, subject matter experts in machine learning and AI. And that's really what you need when you're building an innovative next-gen technology.
Absolutely. So I know when you and I did our prep session, you mentioned that everybody's working in the office. So what has it been like building a company in New Brunswick, finding talent, making sure that the team is working cohesively together, despite the fact that most of your clients are probably not in New Brunswick?
Exactly. So certainly there's challenges and there's opportunities like everything in life. And one of I'd say the great things about having our company in New Brunswick is when my co-founder and I, Kendall, decided to start the company. One of our sort of core pillars, big part of our mission, was to create interesting work for young people who wanted to work on the latest and greatest technology. So New Brunswick, much like the rest of Canada, the economy is based on natural resources. It's not exclusive to Atlantic Canada. It is a Canadian, and I think that becomes more and more evident during these times. Things like agriculture, lumber, forestry, manufacturing, of those things. However, when it comes to technology, people are really investing in technologies that are going to drive those industries. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the technology is older, it's legacy, and the innovation that they're buying is usually coming from outside of the region and often from outside of Canada. And so if you want to build a new capability, you have to give people things to work on. Mm-hmm. And we really love Atlantic Canada. Even for ourselves, when we were kind of growing up as entrepreneurs in the region, there weren't that many opportunities for people. And so when we decided to build a wealth tech company, we also knew that there would be a demand for talent. Mm-hmm. Building software, you can say, well, code is code. It really doesn't matter where you're deploying it to. However, what we found is having people who really understand financial services, deeply understand the wealth industry, and in particular, the data that's required to drive all of those services and solutions becomes a real advantage. Mm-hmm. And you can build out that capability in a region. And so that was part of our mission. And so when we do recruiting, we recruit people who share that passion, have an interest. We have hired almost exclusively from the region, University of New Brunswick, Dalhousie, St. FX, and people who have come internationally and have decided to make New Brunswick their home. And so what's been great about that is we're able to recruit people that share our mission and our purpose. They are almost always the top of their class. They're extremely bright. They want to work with other people. Part of it is place. They want a community. So, in technology, you could work anywhere, and it's a global workplace opportunity. So these folks have said, I want a place and I want to be here. So our employee retention is really high. Mm-hmm. And we're working in a very complex industry. And so to have people around for a really long time really makes our company stronger and ensures that we're delivering really good services and solutions to our clients.
That's awesome. I love the build it and they will come
Yeah.
mentality. Lori, I'm curious to understand a little bit more about your company, exactly what it does, and how it's different from today from when you were just starting out.
So when we started the company, before starting the company, I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years, and we started this company in 2015. Previously, I had a consulting company, and I was working with one of the Canadian banks in their wealth division in the mass affluent area, so retail investors, their high net worth group, their family offices. And I saw a real disconnect between their ability to help the retail investor understand that they were invested in the right product. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the simple answer that, people want to know. Is this going to help me meet my objectives, my vision of the future, what I need money for throughout my life? And does it meet my risk tolerance? Am I invested in things that are too risky for me, or maybe not risky enough to achieve the things that I want to? And I could see this disconnect for a variety of reasons, which we'll probably get into. And there was no simple way to get people timely information to this question. And so that was the genesis of building out something that would enable a timely delivery of that kind of information. And financial advisors often struggle to get their clients answers to their questions in a timely way because they have to go back to their head office. The data has to get pulled from somewhere. A report has to be run. And so you're looking at weeks and weeks, sometimes months, to get the answers to your questions. And so what ended up happening is we would come to Toronto very regularly. We'd meet with all kinds of people in the industry. And what we found is that we had built a solution that really helps the back office of investment firms feel confident that their advisors and their network of advisors are selling the right products to their clients. And of course, there's a regulatory obligation to do that. In Canada, it's an organization called CIRO, the Canadian Investment Regulatory Organization. And of course, firms and their advisors have to meet regulatory obligations around suitability, is it suitable products, and when they trade and how they trade and those kinds of things. And so we ended up really focusing in on delivering a compliance platform to investment firm back offices so they could monitor and make sure that they were providing suitable product and meeting the CIRO regulations.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Given that, the regulatory landscape in Canada is never static, what do you foresee to be the next biggest changes in the next, let's say, 1 to 2 years?
Yeah, it's definitely something we pay attention to closely and are involved with many industry organizations and keep track of these things. One of the things that most people may have heard of is open banking. Mm-hmm. In Canada, we've changed the label to consumer-driven banking. And of course, when we started the company in 2015, I was engaged in committee work around open banking. So it takes a long time for policy actually to get created and for change to happen. And in Canada, now we are really moving towards having the regulation in place. It's passed through Parliament. It's happening. In the UK, they are really known as an early adopter. They moved forward quite quickly. It was more prescriptive in the way in which they did that. There's lots of learnings for Canada because we're coming a little bit further behind in that. And in the US, they too took their own path, a very independent path, not prescriptive by the government necessarily in the beginning. It really was industry led. And so I think for us, what we're going to see and just to describe what consumer-driven banking or open banking does, it's kind of like on the health journey where in the health care field, there is a movement to collect and own your own health data. Mm-hmm. So now, whereas in the past, you couldn't go on an app and see the results of your tests from the hospital, you can do that now. You can own your own health data, move that around to different specialists. So think about financial services and open banking the same way. So as a person who has money in a financial institution, I have a right to understand all of the things about that data that's being held at that institution. And for the investment industry, that means, all of the ways in which my data is used in the organization. I could get that data at any point in time that I want to. And that opens up opportunities for fintechs to come in and offer different services to individuals layered on top of the data that their financial institution uses. For us at 4Eyes, where we very much focus on wealth, there is an application for open banking, and it's around know your client. Mm-hmm. So if you're an investor, if you work with an advisor, you fill out a know your client form, or in some cases, if you're working for a portfolio manager, it's an investment policy statement that would be developed based on doing, interviews and all kinds of assessments around what you'd like to do with your money and attributes, personal attributes. So with open banking in the investment world, there is a likelihood that know your client data would then be portable. Mm-hmm. So it wouldn't be unique to one advisor or one institution. You'd be able to port that data if you choose to have multiple places that you invest your money in. And currently that's not the case. And so that creates standardization, which is great because it also relieves a lot of manual tasks and disconnects when you're looking to update that KYC information. So there's a regulatory obligation to update the KYC information depending on what kind of program you're in. It's once a year, or every 3 years. And if you're doing that in separate ways with separate institutions, you can't really, feel for certain that your know your client information is aligned appropriately with your investments, which would be called know your product.
So Lori, in general, why do you think Canada has been slower to adopt open banking? And wait, let me re-ask that. So Lori, why do you think Canada has been behind other countries like the UK, for example, in terms of adopting open banking? And in general, how do you think we compare to other countries on the global scale in terms of our regulatory environment?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think I would boil it down to countries and the culture of the country that you live in. The regulation tends to reflect that. Mm-hmm. And so in the UK, there is I would say it's more directive, more prescriptive in some ways, and the focus is really on the individual, the consumer, and there's a lot of protections and a lot of thoughtfulness about how to make sure that people are protected. In Canada, I think we have, we are part of the Commonwealth. We come from that place. Mm-hmm. It is, I think we're kind of like, if you were comparing the US, the UK, and Canada, I think we're somewhere in the middle. The US is very independent. Canada and the US, much more industry-led. But there's still, we're going to put some boundaries and guidelines around this, and we're going to make sure that it's completely tightened up before we put it into play. Mm-hmm. I'd say also market size is relevant. In the US, the industry is, 10 times the size of Canada. There are all kinds of different players, and the competition in the financial services sector is so vast. In Canada, we have, 6 major banks. We have fewer financial services companies. And so like any innovation, they want to protect what they have. But not only protect from competition, but I think there is a real and true protection on the data, because the data is generally going to be used from the main source of data, and that is going to be coming from our large banks. Mm-hmm. And so open banking is about then opening up APIs and data transfer and all kinds of things that there's a liability issue. Are we liable, or how do we think about that? In the US, they're not as fussed about those kinds of things. It's like, this is coming, it's happening, we're going to do it, we're going to figure it out, and they just move forward. In here, we kind of want to have all the answers in Canada and before we get going. And of course, when it comes to innovation, you never have all the answers.
You're absolutely right. And maybe on the topic of barriers or headaches to innovation, what do you think those are currently for companies like yours in Canada?
So we we would be an B2B, business to business, enterprise software company. And so we're selling into large institutions. And these are like small cities, and they have all kinds of divisions, lines of business, levels of decision making, and all kinds of legacy technology. And so ecosystems that are old and in some places new, and of course, they don't speak to one another. So when you're selling into an environment like that, there's a lot of complexity. And so one of the hurdles for us as a young fintech when we started out was, in order to drive a cloud-based, data-first solution set, you need to be able to access that data, and it needs to be clean, and it needs to be structured and usable to actually deliver the service. We realized quite early on that fuel needed to run our solution wasn't available. Because data was held hostage in endpoint solutions and silos all over the place, the big challenge for big enterprises is consolidation of data and creating structured and usable data that's clean. And anyone that has ever done statistical analysis understands how important that is, and having large data sets. And so that was a really big hurdle for us. And also just being in the cloud at that time, I'm talking 10 years ago, there were still some hesitations about cloud-based technologies. Well, a lot has changed in 10 years, and that is still a hurdle for these large enterprises. But the shift is everybody sees the value in AI. There's no question now. Like before, it was like, oh, .ai. I mean, people have been talking about AI throughout my entire lifetime, but now people are actually starting to use it. And so organizations understand that in order for them to do business in the next 10 years, they have to be in the game. And that means they have to have their data house in order. And so there's a lot of momentum, a lot of expertise that I think these organizations are bringing into their own. And we're finding the conversations are really focused on the future. And so for a company like ours, built natively in the cloud, able to be a partner to those firms in their journey to get real value out of AI and machine learning, to create more predictability in the way that they do their business, is extremely valuable. And so, this is one of those things we took a bet on, and I think we're much, much closer in reality today. So that is definitely a big hurdle. And I'd say what I've discovered is that's not unique to Canada. We find the same thing in the UK and in the US.
So AI is such a buzzword right now.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about it. It's coming. There's no doubt. You just said so. But how do you think that's going to reshape compliance in, the near future, even the far future? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think for industries that have good, inputs, clean structured data that you can actually run good machine learning and good algorithms off of, there is going to be an acceleration. And I'm excited about that because we, for example, work with clients who have their own environments that are closed environments. We're running millions of transactions through there. And currently, we can auto clear. We have some level of, automation built into our solutions. What's exciting for us is we now have clients that want to partner with us in accelerating their own ability to create predictability so that they can remove the, I would say, general transactional types of activities and completely automate them. Of course, when we talk about AI, the thing that's kind of scary, and I'm a cautious person by nature, so I'm good to be in the regulatory field. However, the things that are required are transparency, so we can have that in these environments with the data that belongs to a unique client. These are good types of use cases for AI. We will not build our own algorithms, nor will we go out and source outside of the Amazon Web Services environment. So that creates another sort of level of protection around that. And security. And so all three of those things are really critical. We have those wrapped around. We have client partners who are excited about, working together to enable some use cases. So for example, you could look at all the transactions that go through a firm's by their advisors, the trading that they do. And you can look at how their compliance team deals with all of those transactions. And you can start to make predictions that, would no longer need to have human oversight over it. You could just say, oh, we know when this happens, this is what people do, and let's start auto-clearing these things. So we can accelerate a lot of the automation and then start focusing on behaviorally how advisors are guiding their clients and the kinds of solutions that they're putting in front of them. And you can get into some really interesting things. And I see that certainly in the next 2 to 3 years.
And what do you think is the sweet spot between, using AI to automate a lot of these tasks that you were just talking about, but also making sure that there is human oversight and also not getting in trouble with the regulators?
Absolutely. And I think the big thing is transparency. Like you need to be able to explain, show, and describe how you arrived at something. And having a platform like ours does enable snapshotting of all of these things so you can look at a clear kind of audit trail. Also, I would say even a more simple use case would be on reporting. So sometimes at the firm level, they say, well, we want to know how many clients we have at our firm that are over 65 that are invested in this type of portfolio. You can do that with AI so quickly. You don't have to build a static report. It's just whatever it is that you're trying to figure out in the moment, you can figure that out. And it gives you some stepping stones in your conversation to say, are we on the right track with what we're trying to do? And so it's really that breadcrumb of activity that you can go back and look at to see, where or if you've gone off track. It's that auditing along the way, not just at the end. Reminds
me of getting tested in high school and having to show your work on math exams.
Right. It's exactly that. And, it makes sense to, you can't just say you did a thing. Why did you do it? And I think the evidence can still be created in this particular situation. There are a lot of other situations that are concerning around AI, but I think this is an easy use case. Yeah.
Got it. So what is your favorite use case right now for AI? And what do you think is something that is maybe outlandish or doesn't make sense that maybe other people are talking about?
Well, I think anything around the marketing side of things is a good use case because it's also about risk and impact. I mean, maybe you're targeted with the wrong product. That's not the end of the world. That is not devastation does not ensue. Those kinds of things I think are great introductory, use cases for us as a society. Also doing research, medical research, I think are beautiful cases for AI. When you've got closed wall environments that you can do it in. Inviting in third-party AI algorithms into large ecosystems is concerning. I think that it just depends on the culture of the firm and the culture of the industry. We're talking about financial services, so generally fairly conservative. That's not to say there are a lot of people who are willing to go out there and be the first. I'm an entrepreneur. I love being first, but I think again, you need to have feel good about the security, feel good about the explainability, transparency, and all of those things. So Yeah, I think the note takers are interesting. The AI note takers. There's a lot of people talking about those note takers replacing CRM systems, for example, which is really interesting because you don't really need to input things into a CRM. You let the note taker take the notes, push the data out into the workflows that it needs to go into without without that sort of middleware happening in the middle.
So maybe, Lori, on the topic of, cool new things coming ahead, when you and I did do our prep call, we talked about how RegTech maybe isn't necessarily, the sexiest industry out there, but how do you find it spicy for yourself? How do you, find it interesting and continue to, find the work important and fulfilling?
I love that question, and it's an important one. I was motivated from my own personal experience to start this company and having a desire to understand the answer to the question that I posed at the very beginning of our conversation. Am I invested in the right products? How do I know? And what's an easy way for me to get that answer anytime I want it? I'll give you a really specific how it keeps getting interesting is I talk to people who tell me about their journey. So actually, before coming here today, I met with someone who's been in the industry a long time, but most people are also investors. Most people have an RSP, a TSFA, or some kind of investment. A lot of people have advisors. And so I hear stories like this one. So this gentleman told me that in the industry, after seeing a demo of our product, where we also do digital onboarding for clients and we collect all of their personal information, their KYC information. We do automated updates for Know Your Client, which is a real pain in the butt for people because sometimes they have to go to their office, the advisor's office. But in this case, and it was just this morning, he said, I've been in the industry a long time and I won't tell you who the institution is, but they literally mailed him a paper form with the signature tags on it and the places for him to sign. And he had to mail it in the physical mail back to them.
In 2025.
This was 2 weeks ago. So when I hear things like that, I'm weird though. I hear that and I get excited. I'm like, that shouldn't be happening. I can't even believe that's happening. And I want to be part of changing that. It doesn't need to happen. We can do that either automatically or for a few clicks and it's done. The concept of enter data once and use it everywhere excites me because I like efficiency. I have much better things to do with my time than go to a branch or fill out a piece of paper and try to find a stamp in a mailbox. Life offers more to us than that. And so that really does excite me. And I think that comes across when we talk to people. Also, another point made by one of my colleagues is think about your job. If your job is to look at transactions on a trade blotter every day to see if they're meeting the regulatory requirements, that's not a really great way to spend every day. If you can actually have a system that presents a dashboard that tells you where you should be digging in deeper, where you don't need to, an interface that tracks your progress so you know how you've done that day, that week, that you can feel good about the work that you're doing. I think that most young people coming into these environments really want to have an experience and tools to support them that aren't antiquated. And that excites me because we need young people full of energy and ideas to be working in these industries if we want them to continue to grow, thrive, and do what we want them to do.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And out of curiosity, what's your new favorite fresh idea of the moment?
One of the things that I'm thought might be years off for us in our company is the use of AI. And I know we talked about that, but around understanding investor behavior and pulling that forward into the conversation through the work that we do. I think that is accelerating and more advanced in terms of timeline. And there was a time where I thought, is that going to happen during my tenure in this company and what I'm doing? I definitely see it happening. And I think there's so many insights to be gained from all of these data points. I'm really excited about that. And I love the idea of, we all say, okay, Alexa, Google, tell me the weather, da, 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 da. But also the day where in these firms and potentially at the client side and the advisor side, our original ambition was give people this information in a timely way so they don't have to wait weeks or months. I see that coming really soon. And I don't know that it's a fresh idea, but it is kind of your dream becoming a reality before your eyes, which is very exciting. I see that happening.
We've had a few speakers on this podcast already. And of course, since AI and automation is an important topic of the moment, super relevant, I like to ask the question, what aspect of the advisor-client interaction do you think will never be replaced by technology and or be able to be automated?
Well, the relationship. And most people trust their advisor. They wouldn't have them as their advisor, but that trust that's built over time, it's like having a knowledgeable friend who cares about you, but can be distant enough to give you good advice and keep you on track. And even the most experienced investors are not necessarily relying on their financial advisor or advisors to pick product. It's guidance or directionally around, am I making good choice over the long term? And that is something that an individual who actually understands, knows you, has empathy for your situation, also understands what's going on in your life right now and why you might be asking for something that isn't generally in line with the way that you would move forward. And, we can get answers back from AI that are completely off track right now. We've all done it, definitely. I'm sure. And you look at that and you go, thank goodness I know the difference. And I think that if you're working with an advisor, a human who is enabled by AI, there are many, our company's called FourEyesFinancial, and the reason for that, we named it that, is a second set of eyes on life's most important decisions. And I think you've got that person who sits across from you and is enabled by technology, but ultimately is truly giving you good advice based on who you are.
Well, Lori, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you. You've had a monumental career. Your journey in entrepreneurship has been very impactful, but I'm curious to know, as a wrap-up question, as being in financial services and technology, I assume that, being a woman, you're the minority in a lot of the rooms that you end up in. And how has that been like for you?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. That is true. And I think early in my career, I didn't even notice. And I think that's unusual. However, as I get older, and I'm leading a technology company in financial services, I have become more reflective on that, and I've been more observant about what that means. One of the things that I hear, and it's partly I learned from the young people that work for us, and as we, it was really important to hire software developers and data engineers and people that were the best, the absolute best. And we wouldn't compromise anything for having the best. And, what we found is a lot of those people were women, young women. And we did not have a policy to hire a certain percentage of women, but it was really important to me that we gave equal opportunity for the best and brightest to come to the table. And so 50% of our engineering team are women, and that is a high percentage. I feel very proud of that, and I have learned a lot from those women. We have discussions that, probably wouldn't happen if you didn't have that number of women in the room, and they think about things differently, and I think it adds so much to the texture and quality of our company. I think it also makes our software better. And, It's interesting because one of my clients was a woman, also used to being the only woman in the room. She was a client of mine in my consulting company. When I started the technology company, I reached out to her and I said, this is what we're thinking about doing. She was a chief investment officer for a very large family office. And she had worked at, many of the big banks in very senior executive roles. And she's a straight shooter, and really a big proponent of women. But I never really had that. That wasn't my sort of thing that I would, say, like, I'm getting behind. She's like, you need to do this, and this is really important. And so she's on our board now, and a lot of in the capitalization of a technology company, you meet venture capital, folks leading in those areas, in private equity, just investment banking and all of those areas. And I do find that I notice and I look for, to some extent, some leadership in the room or a different perspective. It's helpful and it's important. And I think that I've learned that over time. And it's really nice to see so many more women being in financial services and in technology where they should be.
Absolutely. There's one sitting right in front of you.
Exactly.
Lori, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on again. I've had a lot of fun talking to you, and it's great to know that there are lots of bright and empathetic and compassionate Canadian women leaders out there like you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our visit today. Thank you.
Great.